In this world every day, countless people die for various reasons. Some are predictable, while others die from accidents that they never thought of. At a school in Korea, the sky is blue, the clouds are white, the sun is bright, and a male student is wearing a pure white uniform. He is not playing or studying, but is falling from the rooftop, surrounded by countless skyscrapers. Why did a flash of doubt appear in this boy's mind? But at the last moment of his life, the answers to these questions seemed to have lost all meaning. The lens was pulled closer to his face. His eyes were wide open. His expression was incomprehensible. His face was angular and handsome, but full of wounds. The wind was howling in his ears. Until now, he still doesn't understand why he fell from the rooftop. His plan is not yet complete. He planned to graduate early, endure all the hardships, fall from high above his eyes, look towards the rooftop where there are 4 boys. The male student is leaning on the rooftop railing. One of them has no clear expression, but the other 3 young men all have mocking smiles on their faces, looking at him falling. Time seemed to stop at this moment, both fast and slow. A confused expression appeared on his face. He really didn't understand why things turned out like this. But he had one thing he could confirm today, was the day he died. He simply admitted the situation he was about to face. His body was straight, but his head was facing down. The male student was rushing down to the ground in his head. He was thinking, right now would he die? What was waiting for him was death, or something else? Was the male lead, would he die? Something unexpected must have happened then. Let's wait for our male lead. The scene transitions to the hospital as time passes quickly. A nurse's voice rang out, "Ma'am, it has been 3 months already. I'm very sorry to say this, but I have never seen a patient regain consciousness after being diagnosed as being in a vegetative state. I think you should start preparing for the possibility that..." The scene swiftly transitions from outside the hospital to the hallway of the patient ward, then into a hospital room. Lying motionless on the bed is a young man, his head wrapped in stark white bandages, an oxygen tube inserted into his nose. Beside the bed sits an elderly woman with snow-white hair. Upon hearing the nurse's words, she becomes agitated and abruptly interrupts her, shouting, "What the hell are you saying? Are you telling me my grandson will never wake up? Are you asking me to give up on him?" The elderly woman's emotional outburst startles the nurse, who hurriedly explains, "No, ma'am, that's not what I meant." The young man lying unconscious on the bed is the male student who fell from the rooftop. The male student's consciousness can sense everything around him. He thought to himself that after falling from the rooftop, he was predicted to be a vegetative person, which he had only heard of before. Sitting by the bed, the old lady held his hand tightly, sobbing as she spoke. Her voice reached Ho-sung, making him feel her presence. She kept encouraging her grandson, refusing to give up. "Wake up, my grandson! Wake up! How could you leave like this?" Her desperate cries echoed in his ears. Ho-sung could hear his grandmother's voice. "I'll be fine. I've never been sick or anything like that. I'm sure I'll be able to move again soon. But in this dark world, there is nothing I am allowed to do at all." In the silent night, inside the hospital room, the grandmother's voice echoed once more. She held his hand tightly, sobbing as she spoke. "Ho-sung, they told me to give up hope. But how could I? I raised you after you lost your parents. There's no way I would ever abandon you." The grandmother cried out beside his bed, her voice filled with despair. Then, as if pleading with him, she said, "Just once, just one time is enough. Please, show me a sign that you're still conscious." Hearing his grandmother's heartbreaking plea, Hyun-sung struggled to move his body. "Move! Move!" he shouted at himself in his own consciousness, furious at his own inability to respond. At another time outside Ho-sung's hospital room, the bright sunlight was shining everywhere. From inside the hospital room, a trembling voice could be heard. "Hyung, I can't take it anymore." Beside Ho-sung's hospital bed, a young boy in a school uniform lay face down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Those bastards who used to bully you, now they're coming after me too." Bruises covered the boy's face, with some wounds carefully bandaged. His expression was a mix of pain and utter despair. Hearing his younger brother's words, Ho-sung was filled with rage. "Those damn bastards!" He cursed furiously. The boy continued speaking, his voice trembling. Grandma. She started working at a restaurant to pay for your hospital bills, and I keep getting hurt over and over again. What am I supposed to do? Tears streamed down his face as he cried, pouring out the family's struggles. So this boy, he was none other than Hun Sung's younger brother, Kim Hun Jain. Hearing those words, Hun Sung was stunned. What? Grandma, Kim Hun Jain. It felt as if his world was crumbling. His younger brother, seemingly on the verge of breaking down, suddenly shouted through his tears, "Hyung, just go! If you die, we won't have to suffer like this anymore!" He cried until his voice turned hoarse, tears streaming down his face as he shouted desperately, "Please, wake up! Stop lying there! Get up now!" The endless tears of his loved ones fell, reaching Ho Sung's heart. At that moment, he forgot everything, forgot that he needed to get up, to keep living. Even his own tears wouldn't fall. This must be a dream. I'm just having a long dream. If I wait a little longer, I'll surely wake up from this. Perhaps reality was simply too cruel. Ho Sung kept comforting himself with those thoughts. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 3 years had already gone by since the day Ho Sung's accident. In the hospital's green courtyard, many patients could be seen strolling or resting on the benches, enjoying the fresh air. Inside the hospital room, Hun Sung let out a silent sigh. It's been so long. Hun Jain hasn't come to visit. Inside the hospital room, 2 women were engaged in conversation. One of them spoke in a hushed tone. Did you hear? Kim Hun Sung's grandmother collapsed. The other woman gasped. Really? Is that true? Hearing this, Hun Sung was stunned. What? Grandma? Outside the hospital room, the 2 women chatted and laughed. Looks like we can turn up the volume on the TV now. Hearing that, Hun Sung cursed silently in his mind. Damn it. None of this means anything. The faces and names of those people flashed through Hun Sung's mind. Pi Min Chun, Cho Yong Ch, Dong Min Ho, Ka Trang Suk, Oda E Hwan, Kim Wai Chun, and even those teachers who covered for those bastards. If some miracle could send me back to that time, I would crush every single one of them. It was as if some magical force was at work. Everything became blurry. Flash forward from Ho Sung on the hospital bed to a photo of him and his grandmother. Hyun Sung was full of anger and was madly taking revenge on those who had bullied him. Ho Sung grabbed Park Min Chun's head, making him scream in fear and pain. Ho Sung continued to beat him. Is it more painful than me? As a bedridden person, I'm sure no matter how much pain you feel, it's nothing compared to what my grandmother had to endure. Ho Sung was filled with anger, he growled. Before his eyes was a bright red color. The people who had bullied him were all knocked down on the ground. His heart was struggling fiercely. No, this is not what I wanted. There is no revenge like this. From beginning to end, no matter what method or measure, I will plan to pull them out by the roots so that they will never be able to get up again. I must make them face pain that is more terrible than what I have experienced. A perfect plan to ruin everything in their lives. Time outside kept passing. 4 years passed, 5 years passed, 6 years passed, then the 7th year. The long, long time kept on pouring into his soul. His heart was filled with wounds, filled with hatred towards those who had harmed him. His dark heart kept thinking, yes, this plan is not bad. Let's deal with that bastard. But outside Ho Sung's hospital room, 15 years had passed, and he was still lying motionless. On the hospital bed, he thought, anyway, everything is useless. I don't care who it is. Please end my life. 15 long years, he lay motionless, on the hospital bed, unable to do anything. The hopes before, the anger before, the hatred before. Perhaps at this point he had reached his limit, desperately begging for an end to his life. Outside the hospital room, Ho Sung's eyes were filled with tears. In his subconscious, a tall, muscular man wearing a patient's gown looked at that man and smiled slightly at him. He also smiled and faced that man. Suddenly, the scene changed to a place filled with sunlight. He thought to himself that it was morning. Why did this place feel like a classroom? Everything before his eyes was so familiar to him. There was a whispering sound around him that he thought was the familiar sound of the TV. Suddenly, Ho Sung woke up as if he was awake. Why was there a sound on the blackboard? Stop it, you bastard, stop it. Ho-sung saw the scene before his eyes and could not believe his eyes. In the classroom, the students were laughing and talking happily. He thought to himself that yes, this must be a dream again. He reached up to pinch his face, but the pain woke him up from his illusion. It really was like that if this was not a dream. He saw the pen on the table. Without hesitation, he picked up the pen and stabbed it straight into his thigh. It hurt. He couldn't believe this wasn't a dream. He was really back. After countless hopes and despairs, he couldn't believe this was real. Ho-sung sat in the classroom, pen in hand, bewildered. Suddenly a loud shout echoed throughout the class. "What the hell did you say?" It turned out to be Park Min-chun. As he spoke, he lifted his leg and kicked the male student sitting at the last table, causing him to fall to the ground. Everyone around could only watch as he continuously kicked the male student, cursing incessantly. "Do it yourself, you son of a bitch. If I wanted to do it myself, what would I tell you to do?" The male student was beaten until his face was covered in blood. He begged me to stop. I didn't dare anymore. The male student's plea evoked the pain and insecurity that Ho-sung had experienced. He was stunned, thinking that this was the beginning of his suffering. Images of the past appeared in his head. He was bedridden like a vegetable for so many years. His grandmother cried so hard that it broke her heart. Jin was desperate. He begged him to wake up. He fell from the stairs, powerless to do anything to those who caused him pain, their faces. It was at that moment that Ho-sung, without thinking much, he stood up and walked in front of Park Min-chun and said, "Stop." Park Min-chun turned his head thinking he heard wrong. He sat on the table laughing and said, "That's interesting. That's interesting, Kim Ho-sung. Do you think you can handle this situation? Do you think you're not like this guy? You're delusional." Ho-sung didn't say anything and just stood there silently listening to Park Min-chun's mockery. The surrounding students stood there in fear. Ho-sung's face was cold, and without any warning he threw a punch at Park Min-chun's face. At this moment he really felt like he was back in his first year of high school, back to the moment he had always wished for. Park Min-chun never expected that he would be sent back in time by someone he looked down on to the day when Ho-sung's life would change dramatically, not for the better, but for a direction that perhaps Ho-sung would never have imagined. He could still clearly remember what happened that day. During recess, the students were either doing their own things or happily chatting with friends. There was a male student sitting at the last table with dyed blonde hair, wearing only a white tank top, completely unsuitable for the school's style. That was Park Min-chun. He only listened to lectures superficially, a typical example of those who like to bully and harass others. He really liked playing an online game called Online Legend. Then Park Min-chun, wanting to find a hired plowman, grabbed a chubby-looking male student who was good at studying and sat at the last table and said, "Hey, you're smart. You must be good at online games. Can you help me upgrade my character?" he said while holding his phone in one hand and using his other hand to press hard on the fat male student's shoulder. His tone seemed like he was discussing, but was full of intimidation, causing the male student to be scared and agree. Seeing this scene, Park Min-chun smiled and asked, "You said, right? Now you agree to upgrade my character, right?" From that day on, Lee Dong-min, a chubby, gentle, and smart student who was the best in class, became a gaming machine for Park Min-chun. Liu-min, the top student in the class, began to see his grades decline. Park Min-chun did not let go and continued to harass Liu-min. He was like a ghost, haunting this weak and good student, saying that with such high scores he must have a lot of money because he kept spending money on games and buying items for Min-chun. Liu-min was so pressured that he exploded and directly told Min-chun to play by himself from now on. It was on that day that Ho-sung first witnessed violence happening right before his eyes. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he remembered that Liu-min would sometimes kindly teach him lessons. He couldn't just watch Liu-min get beaten up without any friends coming to his aid. Seeing Ho-sung about to run to stop his friend, he grabbed his hand and said no. Ho-sung disagreed and argued that it was wrong. The worried friend advised Hun-sung not to get involved in this matter and said, "Are you crazy? That's Park Min-chun. Touching him is like digging your own grave." Even though he knew what his friend was saying, Hun-sung still firmly pulled his hand away from his friend's hand. He thought to himself, I'm a special sports student who has never been ranked last in the male student rankings. How can I get involved in this matter? So Ho-sung approached Park Min-chun, who was beating Leung-min, and asked him to stop, making him surprised and turn around to look at Hun-sung. At that moment, the name Park Min-chun was no longer scary to Hun-sung. As soon as the teacher ran over, the incident was handled roughly. Since then, Park Min-chun's gang began to harass Ho-sung crazily. Every day, Ho-sung was dragged out and beaten violently by Park Min-chun's gang. The person who is always full of injuries, never gets well, beaten to the point of being physically disabled and mentally disabled. Even after school, there were nights when Hun-sung couldn't sleep because of being bullied. For example, when running errands to buy things in the game for them, he had to drag his body full of injuries, his hands and feet covered in blood, and he was angry all night playing the game just to level up to shoot Min-chun and his gang. Except for hell, there were no words that could describe my current situation. Everything returned to the moment when the hellish time was about to begin. Even if Hun-sung died, he would never forget it. In the first semester of the first year of high school, the whole class was stunned when they saw Ho-sung punch Park Min-chun in the face, who was known as the #1 bully in school. Perhaps even Park Min-chun never thought that he would be beaten like that. His eyes widened and he froze for 5 seconds. After coming back to his senses, he roared like a wild animal that had been violated. But before he could say anything more, Ho-sung's hand quickly and strongly grabbed his head. Slamming his face down on the desk in front of everyone, it hurt him so much that his legs shook and he jumped up. Ho-sung still grabbed his hair and lifted him up. Park Min-chun's face was covered in blood. Blood flowed from his mouth all over the desk because he had been slammed hard on the desk and he hadn't recovered yet, so his eyes still couldn't focus. A few students were standing around the table talking about blood. The class president was always like that. Ho-sung still did not stop. That moment and that scene were deeply engraved in Ho-sung's mind. When he was unconscious, he continuously hit Park Min-chun's face as if he wanted to vent all the frustration he had felt all this time. He was the one who pushed Hun-sung and his family into a miserable situation. Park Min-chun's fighting style relied on his physique. He wasn't used to being beaten because he thought that if Hun-sung attacked first, he would definitely be knocked down. When he regained his composure after being punched in the face and was about to grab Ho-sung's hair and slam it onto the table, Ho-sung had been imitating this scene for the past 15 years. Even the next moves he had to make, he probably didn't know how long Ho-sung had been waiting for this moment. Now, after throwing countless punches at Park Min-chun's face, Ho-sung grabbed his shirt and threw it hard towards the locker behind the classroom. Park Min-chun fell flat on his back against the cabinet. Ho-sung quickly rushed forward and kicked him in the face and body, punch by punch, kick by kick without any mercy. At this moment in his mind, there was only one thought. No matter how much he was beaten, if he dared to raise his head, then kick him in the face. If he dared to use his hand to block, then kick and break his arm. Suddenly a chair flew and hit Ho-sung, who was hitting Park Min-chun. Ho-sung coldly turned his head to look at the chair that had just flown in front of him. The back door of the classroom was filled with students rushing in while shouting, "Stop, you bastard!" He called Min-chun. Seeing those people, Ho-sung was not afraid at all, just shook his head slightly, making a cold rustling sound, and said, "What if I don't want it?" Ho-sung's tough attitude made the group of people stunned because they had never seen anyone dare to speak so loudly to them before. One of them whispered, "Is this bastard crazy?" Rushing into the classroom with Hun-sung was a student with purple hair and a lot of earrings. He looked like a reasonable person, but if he was angry with Park Min-chun because of Hun-sung, then surely he couldn't not know about this. He didn't seem to be afraid at all. "Could you help?" The identity of this purple-haired student was Young Min Ho, a member of Park Min-chun's gang, first-year student of Group 8. Standing next to Dong Min Ho was a tall, muscular student with a fierce-looking face. He said, "Are you scared? Okay, today I will end your game." They were called Park Min-chun's gang because Park Min-chun was the ringleader who bullied the weaker students. The big guy took a few steps forward, shaking his head and wriggling his neck as he walked. He warmed up his joints. He looked at that guy and walked closer. He immediately recognized that in Park Min-chun's group, this big guy was the best fighter. His name was Kang Chan-suk. He was a member of Park Min-chun's gang, a first-year student in Group 8. On this side, Ho-sung coolly gazes at his opponent approaching him. Kang Jang-suk charged forward ferociously, as if ready to devour Hun-sung whole. Suddenly, a short-haired girl's voice rang out from the doorway. "The teacher's here." That single sentence instantly cut through the brewing fight. Suddenly, Park Min-chun was leaning against the cabinet and said politely, "Let's go, we'll deal with it later." Before leaving, Kang Jang-suk bent down to Ho-sung's level, leaned close to his face, and softly warned him, "Just know, you bastard, I'll find you after class ends." Park Min-chun's juniors turned around and left. Kang Trang-tu turned back and threatened Ho-sung not to even think about running away. A skinny guy like a stick also speaks up, you can expect it. Ho-sung said nothing as he watched them leave while Park Min-chun stayed behind, holding his head and groaning because of the pain in his head. Then the teacher entered the classroom, and the class went on as usual. Sitting at the back of the class, Park Min-chun folded his arms and put his face down on the table, silently and resentfully thinking, what the hell just happened? It was obvious that he was beaten first, but at that time, he was already knocked to the ground. Thinking about this, Park Min-chun had never felt so humiliated. He cursed Kim H and shouted, "You dare to insult me, I will kill you." He was so angry that his eyes were red and his face was fierce. He furtively glanced at Ho-sung's seat, thinking that everyone would be here after school. "Do you think you can escape? Actually, if I hadn't let my guard down, I wouldn't have been beaten by that nerd. He must have planned this beforehand because he had never seen me bully that kid before." Even though he was the class monitor and occasionally intervened, there was always a line between them that he never crossed. So Park Min-chun doesn't need to conflict with class president Kim Ho-sung. Anyway, one thing is for sure, Kim Ho-sung has crossed the line before. "I will beat you to death after school." The teacher's voice rang out, "Everyone pay attention to the content of today's midterm exam." The skinny guy sitting at the last desk, still wearing a hairpin, grumbling, "That guy is really annoying." Kang Jang-suk, sitting next to him, replied, "It would have been nice if class had ended earlier. What do you think?" Sitting between the two of them, Young Min-ho glanced at the wall clock to check the time and replied, "But that Kim Ho-sung guy, I don't know if he took the wrong medicine or not. It's like there's no way back. I thought it would be easy to deal with him." Young Min-ho looked unconvinced and crossed his arms to give his opinion, but since he's already done that, we'll have to step on his face in front of everyone. Young Min-ho rested his chin on his hand and wondered if he would tell on this. Skinny, sitting next to him, replied no. Young Min-ho continued, "Maybe he's insane, but whatever the reason, Kim Ho-sung looked down on us in front of everyone. If we let it go, other people will start looking down on us too. So even though we've received the request, let's take this opportunity to stomp on him, so that Kim Ho-sung will never dare to look at us with that arrogant gaze again." It seems that Dung Min-ho is the most thoughtful person among them, always thinking of ways to step on Ho-sung's face. Back in Class 1, Park Min-chun was still seeing things with anger from being humiliated in front of so many people. He roared, "That bastard, I will definitely kill you." Finally, the school bell rang and the teacher walked out of the classroom. Park Min-chun couldn't hold it in anymore. He slammed the table and stood up. He thought to himself, "Kim Ho-sung, this time you're done for." But before he could act, a gust of wind came, followed by a kick from Ho-sung straight into his face. With a thud, Park Min-chun was sent flying by Ho-sung's sudden kick. Receiving a kick in the face, PC Min-chun's eyes widened. Without stopping, Ho-sung continued to grab Park Min-chun's hair and pull him up. Park Min-chun was surprised and didn't understand what was happening. His mind was blank. Ho-sung grabbed Park Min-chun's hair and pulled him up to look at him coldly and said, "We should continue from where we were just now." Park Min-chun looked helpless at Ho-sung and thought to himself, "This bastard. The deal is that you have to stay away from us." Now Hun-sung raised his fist and cursed, "Fuck you." Park Min-chun couldn't believe it and thought to himself, "Does he really want to hit me?" In Class 1 to 8, the teacher announced the end of the class, which meant it was time to leave. Park Min-chun's 3 accomplices immediately stood up. Young Min-ho coldly said that he had no way to run. The skinny guy continued. Where can he run to at school? They shouted loudly to teach that bastard Kim Ho-sung a lesson. Outside class 1-1, there were quite a few students gathered around the classroom door, whispering and gossiping. Not knowing what was going on, Young Min Ho took the lead and aggressively led his juniors towards Ho-sung's class. But when they saw so many students gathered around the classroom door, they all felt confused, not knowing what was going on. Suddenly, they heard Park Min-chun's angry roar from inside, "You motherfucker Kim Ho-sung!" They immediately rushed into the crowd and pushed into Park Min-chun's classroom, knocking down the students surrounding the classroom door. Young Min Ho was the first to rush in and saw Park Min-chun with a bloody face and seemingly passed out. Ho-sung's hand was grabbing Park Min-chun's collar and dragging him back. Young Min Ho stood stunned at the classroom door, looking at Ho-sung with disbelief, as if he was a demon who still wanted to continue beating him. Ho-sung raised his hand and glanced at Young Min Ho, who was standing at the classroom door, and calmly said, "You're late." Park Min-chun's three accomplices looked at Ho-sung, who was dragging the unconscious Park Min-chun with one hand and raising his hand to continue beating him. Seeing this scene, Kang Jang-suk roared at this dog. At the same time, he charged forward like a raging bull. At this moment, Ho-sung was extremely alert. He was calculating how to take revenge for the hatred that had eaten away at his soul for the past 10 years, without a moment of rest. Beating Park Min-chun? No problem. But the biggest problem is this guy. Dealing with Park Min-chun is easy, but with my current strength, I can't easily defeat him. So what should I do now? Ho-sung's eyes fell on the lock hanging loosely on the cabinet door in front of him. It was very simple. Let's do something we've never done before. Ho-sung picked up the lock, held it tightly in his hand, and suddenly slammed the lock into Kang Jang-suk's temple as he rushed forward like crazy. Kang Jang-suk let out a miserable scream. Ho-sung quickly came up with the idea of using a padlock to hit his opponent, which worked. Kang Jang-suk was bleeding. I don't care about fair play. Because of revenge, he no longer had time to choose. At the crucial moment, how could he hesitate? Ho-sung did not stop. He continued to grab his hair, holding the lock in his other hand, and continuously hitting the opponent's head. No matter how much he trained, being hit by metal definitely would not be able to withstand it. He then hit Kang Jang-suk's head again, sending him flying. He had defeated the strongest person in Park Min-chun's group. Young Min Ho and the skinny guy stood at the door and witnessed Ho-sung knocking out the other two guys like he was possessed. Both of them were so scared that their faces turned pale and they could only stand there and watch. Here's my chance. He let go of the lock in his hand. Everything went according to plan. In order to defeat more people, he gathered his strength and rushed forward with all his might. Like this, the main target was the skinny guy, the only remaining member of the group. Ho-sung rushed forward with terrible strength and momentum, knocking the guy away. Choi Yong-taek couldn't bear such a collision. As Ho-sung threw the skinny man down heavily on the hallway, he couldn't react to the next attack. Ho-sung kept throwing punches at him. Choi Yong-taek was completely unable to withstand Ho-sung's attacks. He had planned it all along. He didn't need to pay attention to Young Min Ho, who was attacking from behind. It would be better if he could directly take down Choi Yong-taek. That way, he could win even though they were outnumbered and he was alone. After a brutal beating, Choi Yong-taek was beaten to a pulp. Park Min-chun's blood and Kang Jang-suk's blood splattered on Ho-sung's face and body, making him look like a vengeful demon just out of hell. He had prepared all of this in his mind, but it seemed like his body couldn't keep up with his revenge strategy. Ho-sung was so tired that he couldn't breathe, but he couldn't stop. The revenge wasn't over yet because there was still another bastard there. He tried to stand up again and continue fighting. Seeing Kim Ho-sung defeat 3 people one after another, he was so scared that he trembled. Maybe he himself didn't realize it. Did he suddenly realize that Kim Ho-sung had become so strong? But is he strong enough to be eliminated from the list of targets for bullying? He can't be that strong. In Young Min Ho's eyes, Ho-sung is now like a hideous monster with a power that he can't withstand. He is staring at me with bared teeth. Now that the earring guy was defeated, there was no way he could defeat him. Thinking of this, Young Min Ho was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Ho Sung approached Young Min Ho like a devil, whispering that we should end it. Hearing Ho Sung's threat, Young Min Ho's hands shook uncontrollably. Min Ho cursed himself for his damned hands. At this moment, Ho Sung raised his fist and punched him. Young Min Ho lost all will to fight and could only close his eyes and raise his hands to block. At this moment, a voice rang out, interrupting their fight. To be more precise, it was a one-sided beating. "What are you guys doing?" As if he had been saved, hearing the teacher's voice, Min Ho was overjoyed and secretly sneered in his heart. "Ha ha. Yes, the teacher will notice this because he caused trouble. Now, there are 3 students bleeding. This is a big deal in the school. You're done for, you idiot." Young Min Ho smugly imagined the big trouble that Kim Ho Sung was about to face. In the teacher's room, a voice rang out, "Kim Ho Sung, are you crazy? Even boys have limits. One of them has already ended up in the hospital with a bloody face." A teacher pointed at Ho Sung's face and reprimanded him for his mistake. However, the teacher was worried that this would become a serious matter. If things went badly, as Kim Ho Sung's homeroom teacher, he might have to take responsibility. To avoid getting involved, it would be best for him to scold Kim Ho Sung. But why was this kid so calm in the face of such a big matter? He couldn't understand the student's reaction. Outside, the teacher continued to show a threatening look, saying this problem cannot be solved only at school. "I have been a teacher for 10 years, but I have never seen a student like you. Be prepared, their parents won't forgive you easily. You have to pay for what you've done." Ho Sung calmly interrupted the teacher. "Teacher, don't overreact. This is not the first time school violence has happened." When students sarcastically argued back, the teacher was surprised and asked back, "What?" Ho Sung continued, "If a teacher is good at something, he should be good at himself. The classroom is filled with anti-school violence banners." Ho Sung smiled and suggested that the teacher keep this a secret. "That way, I won't have to cause any more trouble." He laughed coldly in his heart and then expressed his true feelings, saying, "Respected teacher, you are truly amazing." Just as Ho Sung predicted, the teacher who was threatened by the student immediately slapped him and scolded him, "You bastard." The other evil teachers in the room looked on coldly, and no one stopped them. Just as he thought, the reason he was bullied to death was not simply because he was bullied. The cause of his death was because of being bullied, and also because of those cowardly adults who were always busy and did not care about anything outside. After beating Hyun Sung, the teacher angrily said, "Everything has a limit. Don't you feel ashamed?" Ignoring the teacher's scolding, he kept quiet and remembered the past. He clearly remembered that this teacher had accepted bribes from the parents, especially Kim Yang-chun. As the homeroom teacher of the upper grades, he was nothing but trash who did not deserve to be a human being. Ho Sung was beaten until he bled. The corner of his mouth coldly said, "Teacher, stop," seeing a brat daring to talk back to him. The teacher was so angry that he almost exploded and raised his hand to slap him, scolding him, "You bastard." But Ho Sung coldly said, "Teacher, do you really want to continue?" He made the teacher confused and asked, "What?" Ho Sung approached the teacher and said, "You better lower your voice or I can only report to others that you accepted bribes from the parents of the students, especially Young Min Ho's parents. As far as I know, you two are in constant contact with each other. I should shout it out here. Even if it's not, I have other evidence. For example, the fear of the English teacher was threatened by Ho Sung using his own mistakes. The teacher was afraid. He angrily shouted, "Stop!" His hand was still raised high, intending to hit Ho Sung, but Ho Sung was not afraid at all, looked straight into the teacher's eyes and coldly said, "Kim Ho Sung, you bastard." In Ho Sung's past, he was constantly bullied by Park Min Chun's group. Somehow, he finally made a decision. He knew it wasn't a good way, but maybe he didn't know any other way to change his situation. Ho Sung went to his teacher. He thought he needed help from adults because he himself had been and is being bullied at school. He opened the door of the teacher's room to find his homeroom teacher, Kim Yang-chun. At that time, Kim Yang-chun was listening to him talk about being bullied. He calmly picked up his coffee cup and replied, "I see. So that's what happened." Then he called Park Min Chun's group to come right in front of Ho Sung to ask about the situation. Kim Yang-chun asked Park Min Chun, "Was what he said true?" Park Min-chun calmly pretended as if nothing had happened and explained, "Sir, I have no reason to bully my friend. We were just joking around. Because I'm taller, Ho-sung might have misunderstood and thought I was bullying him." Kim Yang-chun, although a teacher, handled the matter carelessly. He only said, "Hey kid, no matter what, don't bully your friends. Don't you think it's not good to punch each other in the face?" Park Min-chun acted very obediently in front of the teacher and put his arm around Ho-sung's shoulder and replied, "Teacher, I'll take note." The others also nodded in agreement. Ho-sung had a hard time mustering up the courage to go to the teacher, an adult, for help. But everything seemed to be in vain. Not only was the problem not solved, it also made Park Min-chun's group hate him more. That was how adults solved his problem. At that time, in the teacher's room, Park Min-chun's group laughed in front of the teacher. As for Ho-sung, after walking out of the teacher's room, he was blatantly threatened by Park Min-chun. His body trembled. Park Min-chun coldly said, "Follow me, Kim Ho-sung. Do you think you can finish telling the story by tattling on the teacher?" He was forced to follow them to the back of the school. Ho-sung was beaten to death by Park Min-chun. Park Min-chun kept kicking him. Ho-sung lay helpless on the ground, only able to raise his arms to block those savage attacks, but no one came to help him. At that moment, he realized he was wrong. He also felt extremely indignant at the way teacher Kim Yang-chun handled it. If you are a teacher, if you are in education, you should at least take seriously what a student tells you that he is being bullied. It is a teacher's responsibility. But when Ho-sung was ignored by the teacher, he was beaten by Park Min-chun, he felt extremely angry. Park Min-chun kicked him and cursed, "Die! I have to kill you today!" At this moment, a figure appeared by the window and witnessed everything. Ho-sung seemed to see hope in his most desperate moment. Was it the teacher? He thought it must be so, because the teacher who witnessed him being beaten with his own eyes must have realized the seriousness of the matter and would definitely punish them severely. But before he could be happy, Kim Yang-chun pretended not to see and turned around to leave. His indifferent actions shocked Ho-sung. Later he found out that Kim Yang-chun was nothing more than a scumbag. He received money from the students' parents, including Young Min-ho's parents. That had become one of his sources of income. Only then did he realize that Kim Yang-chun had no intention of solving this problem from the start. Ho-sung lay helplessly on the ground, tears of humiliation streaming down his face. Tears rolled down his face full of wounds. Then he used all his strength to solve this problem. Even if he had to face it himself, even if he knew he couldn't win this battle. He clenched his fists and struggled to escape this hellish reality. That day was especially violent. He stood up against Park Min-chun's group. But the result made him despair. A shrill female voice rang out, "Oh my God, what happened to my beloved son's face? What kind of bastard made my Min-ho like this?" Young Min-ho held his nose and pretended to be pitiful. It was Ho-sung who started it first. Does this make any sense? Ho-sung did not admit it. He did not know what the point of doing so was. After Ho-sung protested, the whole group ran to the teacher's room to snitch. After reporting Ho-sung, Young Min-ho stood behind his mother and smiled smugly. His plot had succeeded. Young Min-ho's mother dressed luxuriously but tried her best to cover up for her son and warned everyone, "My son's precious nose was broken. We will not let this go." At this time, Ho-sung's guardian, who was also his grandmother, appeared in the teacher's room. In order to avoid her grandson being severely punished for fighting, the grandmother, whose hair was already white, trembled and bowed her head to apologize to Young Min-ho and his family, saying on behalf of her grandson that she was truly sorry. Ho-sung stood in the room and witnessed all the intervention of the adults. This was an area he had no control over. Even without his parents, even on the school's disciplinary committee, he had to bear the punishment alone, while his injuries were much more severe than theirs. Park Min-chun's group, on the other hand, went through their school life without any problems. From then on, Ho-sung fell into a coma until much later when he realized that he could not rely on strength alone to get revenge. Even adult intervention in this matter must be thoroughly resolved to truly benefit him. Back to the present after being threatened by Ho-sung, the teacher glared at Ho-sung. His eyes were filled with panic because his secret had been discovered. He was scared, he was helpless. He could be exposed in front of everyone. He was not willing to be threatened by a child. He immediately turned his head to look around to see if anyone was nearby, afraid that someone else would hear him and he was done for. "Calm down," Kim Yang-chun pretended to be calm and said useless things. He acted like he didn't care. Ho-seung interrupted him. "From now on, when you talk to me, think carefully before you say a word." Ho-seung calmly recounted the details of this teacher's evil deeds. He knew Young Min-ho's parents through a university graduate. He took care of him before he even entered this school. Every month, he received a payment as a bonus. He also had an affair with a female foreign language teacher, a woman who was married with 3 children. The two often went to motels. Do I need to say more, teacher? You live so filthy that it's not even the tip of the iceberg. Ho-seung calmly sat on the swivel chair that the teacher had just sat on and continued. If all of your shortcomings were exposed, your life as a teacher would be very difficult, right? Surely teacher doesn't think that these things are meaningless. If you keep acting like this, even if I make you leave this school, I will still trample on your life. Every word of Hun-seung made Kim Yang-chun scared. Ho-seung recalled that when he was in his 3rd year, Kim Yang-chun's private life was exposed. His wife came to school and gave him a slap in the face, throwing the red-stamped divorce papers at him. On the surface, Kim Yang-chun's family was very wealthy. Rumor had it that all of his family's assets belonged to his wife. If this is true, I'm sure that what Yan-chun fears most is that his dirty deeds will be exposed. So this blackmailing trick didn't work. At this moment, Kim Yang-chun succumbed to Ho-seung's threats. Fear made him bow his head. Kim Yang-chun stood trembling in front of Ho-seung, stammering. Ho-seung sat on the chair like a teacher, and Kim Yang-chun looked like a student who had made a mistake and was admitted his mistake. At this moment, the fates of the two people had completely changed. Kim Yang-chun asked Ho-seung, "What do you want me to do?" Ho-seung replied simply, "If you want me to be silent, then just keep your attitude the same as before." Kim Yang-chun did not understand Ho-seung's meaning for a moment. Ho-seung explained again. He continued to live like a trash and was still a person who took lightly the problems of students, even though he knew it was wrong. But the only thing that has to change is that from now on, you have to do this, because I prevent this from exploding at all costs. If you do as I say until the day I graduate, I will never reveal your secret. Do you understand me? Kim Yang-chun bowed his head to look at Ho-seung. After saying the request, he was sweating profusely in fear. Ho-seung was like a devil, tempting him word by word. Kim Yang-chun was completely subdued. He replied, "Okay, from now on I will do my best." Ho-seung had cleared a major obstacle on his path to revenge. He leisurely walked out of the teacher's room. He thought that Kim Yang-chun was just the first card he had calculated. He had to quickly prepare for the next card. However, he still had some things to do. Ho-seung walked to the classroom door. In Park Min-chun's group, 3 people had to be hospitalized due to severe injuries. Only Young Min-ho was safe and sound. He was sitting in the classroom, a little angry. There was also fear for Ho-seung because he discovered that Ho-seung was much stronger than he imagined. He cursed, "You son of a bitch, are you crazy? I will tear you to pieces and kill you as soon as you come back here." While cursing Young Min-ho, he kicked the tables and chairs. A little angry, he continued to think that Kim Yang-chun, who was receiving money from his mother, would not leave Kim Ho-seung alone. At least he would have to drop out of school. I would never see Ho-seung again. I would not have to cling to that guy anymore. Honestly, I was a little scared. Don't tell me that the others didn't catch him. Thinking of this, his anger rose again. He cursed loudly, "Bastard." At the same time, he lifted the table and threw it far away. The other students were all afraid of him and could only watch, because no one dared to mess with Young Min-ho. Young Min-ho tried to dispel his fear of Ho-seung. He was crazy thinking that he had to become the predator of this school. Just for Kim Ho-seung, he absolutely would not allow his status to fall into the abyss. After consoling himself, he went straight to the back of the class, sat down on a chair and sighed. It was just a coincidence that that bastard had already won against 3 people. If I meet it again, I will destroy it easily. Ho-seung didn't let him fantasize for too long. He pushed open the classroom door and called Young Min-ho's name. Jung Min-ho was startled by the devil's voice that sounded like it came from hell. Ho-sung calmly said, "We should finish what we're doing, shouldn't we?" Jung Min-ho was frightened by Ho-sung's appearance and his question. Ho-sung didn't give him time to think before swinging his fist. A punch like thunder from the sky sent him flying off his chair and falling to the ground. Ho-sung calmly walked slowly to his side like a demon. Fear engulfed him, leaving him powerless to resist. He could only sit there trembling with a pale face. Ho-sung continued to kick Jung Min-ho in the face, causing him to cough up blood. Ho-sung grabbed his collar and continued to punch and kick Jung Min-ho in the face. Jung Min-ho's weak cry for help echoed. Jung Min-ho's mind was thinking, crazy bastard. He's really a lunatic. Please spare me, someone save me. Suddenly he saw Kim Yang-chun's figure from the window. A trace of joy rose in his heart. It was Kim Yang-chun. That's right, damn it. He took his mother's money. Kim Yang-chun stood outside the classroom and saw Ho-sung beating Jung Min-ho through the window. He remembered his promise and cursed under his breath, then turned around and walked away, pretending not to see. Seeing Kim Yang-chun leave without helping, Jung Min-ho was extremely surprised. Ho-sung saw this scene and immediately told him his situation. Don't expect any help, because no one in this school will help you. 5 minutes before Ho-sung and Jung Min-ho got into a fight. In the teacher's room, Kim Yang-chun sat on his chair, anxiously biting his nails, thinking about how to hide this from Ho-sung. This was beyond his capacity because he had 3 students hospitalized. The school, of course, does not want the situation to continue to worsen, but if they do not punish Kim Ho-sung properly, the parents of the victims will definitely make a fuss. Especially Jung Min-ho's parents, the 2 of them will definitely not let anyone who dares to touch their son go. They were wealthy people who owned a lot of real estate in Daesan, and were also very famous. They even donated a lot of money to the school. Wasn't the recent school renovation project funded by them? Furthermore, the 2 of them were personally received by the principal, so their influence could not be underestimated. The most important thing is that I still have their money. Once they know what happened, I will have nowhere to go. Kim Yang-chun could not think of a way. The situation he was about to face gave him a splitting headache. He held his head in panic, not knowing what to do. Kim Yang-chun tried to comfort himself. Think of a way, Kim Yang-chun. If he can't think of a way, his life will end here. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something. His eyes widened. There was no other way. The only way was to separate Jung Min-ho from this time. Kim Ho-sung still hadn't done anything to Jung Min-ho. That brat still hadn't done anything to Jung Min-ho. So if he could convince his parents, maybe they would let this go. Those kids were just friends with the 2 boys anyway. If I find Kim Ho-sung and ask him to at least leave Jung Min-ho alone, then things wouldn't be so bad. It was like finding a way to survive in the face of death. He grinned as if he had just narrowly escaped death. Thinking of doing, Kim Yang-chun immediately stood up and walked out of the room to Ho-sung's classroom. At the same time, he worriedly thought that he had to quickly check on Kim Ho-sung. Otherwise, the situation would be beyond saving. He went to Ho-sung's classroom, but the scene before his eyes left him speechless. Kim Yang-chun stood rooted to the spot. Since when did Kim Ho-sung beat Jung Min-ho to this state? This time, he was done for. Damn it. If Jung Min-ho's parents find out or something, my life will be over. Once the relationship between me and the foreign language teacher is discovered. Thinking of this, Kim Yang-chun dejectedly turned back to his office, not wanting to see the scene of Kim Ho-sung beating Jung Min-ho anymore. The other students who were watching the fight were also stunned to see the teacher leave in a situation where students were fighting. Back in the classroom, Ho-sung grabbed Jung Min-ho's hair. Raising his hand, he prepared to give that bastard another slap. Ho-sung looked extremely fierce at this moment. He thought back to the past indignantly. You dare to look down on me? You're only like this? When you guys bullied me every day for 3 years in high school, you guys always said that I became like this because I was too weak. Now look at you, shaking like a dog while I haven't even done much. The truth is that up until now, after being beaten up by Ho-sung, Jung Min-ho's originally handsome face was bruised and bruised, almost unrecognizable as his precious son. He was beaten to the point that he could only tremble in front of Ho-sung. I thought Ho-sung would continue to hit Jung Min-ho to calm his anger. But he chose to let him go. Ho-sung let young Min-ho go. Without saying a word, he went straight to his seat in the classroom. Pulling out a chair, he sat down and let out a sigh. Then he glanced at Young Min-ho, who was sitting there trembling and cursed under his breath. Damn idiot. At the same time, he also knew that if he let Young Min-ho go, the matter between the three of them would be easier to hide. But if he had chosen to take revenge on them from the beginning, he wouldn't have punched them in the face as soon as he returned to school. Instead, he would have chosen a peaceful life away from those bastards. After going through hell on earth as a vegetative being, the only thing he craved was revenge, and this was the result. Everything would soon be turned upside down. 3 people had been dealt with, and 1 more person remained. As the principal said, he would build a bright future to make the school a prestigious high school. He would definitely try to discipline himself severely for this. On the other hand, there were too many people who witnessed what he had done. It was hard to hide it easily. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop it. If even the Bright Prospect School couldn't protect Ho-sung, then he shouldn't have taken revenge in the first place. This is just the beginning. Ho-sung sat in the classroom staring at the ceiling, plotting his next revenge against all those who had hurt him and his unfortunate family in the past. The scene has been changed to another room. A voice full of anger rang out. "We will never let this go. Student Kim Ho-sung not only sent the victims to the hospital, but also brutally abused them. Furthermore, after consulting with teacher Kim Yang-chun, Kim Ho-sung showed no remorse at all. In addition, this student also brutally attacked student Min-ho. This is truly a heinous crime. Have you seen the appearance of the victims? The children were beaten to the point of being unrecognizable, just like gangsters in movies. And the one who just spoke was the principal of Bright Prospect School, Mr. Od Hwan." Another voice in the room agreed. "Yes, I think we should discipline him immediately." A fashionable teacher also expressed his agreement with Ho-sung's disciplinary action. "I agree with the principal's opinion. And this person is the foreign language teacher of Bright Prospect School, Lee Min-yang. She is married but is having an affair with Ho-sung's homeroom teacher, Kim Yang-chun. She continued to say that we must expel Kim Ho-sung. Sitting next to him while his lover kept demanding discipline and expelling student Ho-sung, he kept breaking out in cold sweat because he was worried about the person who held the fatal weakness of both of them. He cannot let her continue like this. Kim Yang-chun must have silently signaled her to stop talking. Lee Min-yang turned her head around in confusion and asked him what was wrong. Kim Yang-chun looked at her but was speechless, secretly worried. "If you don't know, then just sit quietly. If you don't want our relationship to be discovered, you must protect Kim Ho-sung at all costs. If he gets expelled, everything will be over." Thinking of this, Kim Yang-chun secretly glanced at the end of the table where Ho-sung was sitting, and he saw everything that happened there, and couldn't help but smile smugly. At this time, Kim Yang-chun stood up for Ho-sung. Kim Ho-sung was indeed wrong, but as the homeroom teacher of Class 1-1 through the monitoring process. The cause of this incident was due to the victims including Park Min-chun, sitting in the chair of the school meeting with Ho-sung to decide how to resolve it. Principal Od Hwan looked at Kim Yang-chun with a puzzled expression when he heard him say those words. "What do you mean?" Kim Yang-chun could only continue to explain speechlessly. "There were many rumors about Park Min-chun and his group often bullying other students. I planned to catch them red-handed and discipline them immediately. But it seems that student Kim Ho-sung could not bear it any longer, and the unfortunate thing happened. Dear teachers and students, before becoming a criminal, Kim Ho-sung was also a victim. If we just discipline Kim Ho-sung like that, it is really going against the ideals of an educator." Kim Yang-chun was so worried that he broke out in a cold sweat but still tried to say those words, both to protect Kim Ho-sung and to protect himself. After listening to Kim Yang-chun's explanation, the principal replied with an indifferent expression, "However, teacher Kim Yang-chun's punishment is inevitable." Hearing that Ho-sung would still be punished, Kim Yang-chun panicked and immediately called out to the principal. But Ode Hwan also refused to give in and roared, "Teacher Kim Yang-chun." Sitting at the head of the table, the principal was typing on the keyboard, trying to find a solution. Young Min-ho's parents would not let this matter go. To appease their anger, he had to severely punish the student who caused this incident. If we want to realize our dream of turning this school into a prestigious educational institution, it is essential to maintain good relations with those in power. After careful consideration, Ode Hwan solemnly announced, "We will convene a review committee in a week. During that meeting, we will consider whether to discipline student Kim Ho-sung or not. Therefore, I hope that the teachers will control this incident well and not let rumors spread. In addition, student Kim Ho-sung will be suspended from school until the review committee is convened. Go home and reflect on how your behavior has affected the school. Bring your parents here in a week." Perhaps having anticipated the outcome of this meeting, Hoon-sung smirked and stood up to accept the principal's decision. "I understand." After walking out of the conference room, Kim Yang-chun hurriedly chased after Ho-sung. Catching up with his footsteps, Kim Yang-chun smiled flatteringly, "I tried my best." From the moment he hit Jung Min-ho, this was already beyond my control. No matter how hard I tried, it was useless. "So, damn it. Oh no, can you hold back a little? If you could hold back, then I could have found a chance to make up for this as long as it was within my power." Hearing him jump around and beg not to reveal his dirty deeds, Ho-sung sneered and thought to himself, "When was the last time Kim Yang-chun looked down on me and slapped me in the face? He's just a useless person after all. He's long since thrown away his self-esteem as a teacher. The reason I was able to receive his favor was because he was someone who was willing to sacrifice everything for his own benefit." He knew from the beginning that this matter wouldn't be easy to resolve, but Ho-sung pretended to understand and said, "You've tried your best, haven't you? And what happened before that?" "Don't let him be happy for too long," Ho-sung coldly said. "It seems like you knew from the beginning that Park Min-chun and his group often bullied other students. Remember this, sir. Until the day I graduate from this school, the only way you can stop me from revealing everything is to do your best to make things go smoothly for me, no matter what tricks you have to use. If you can't even do this, not only will I ruin your life but Lee Min-yang's life as well. I swear I'm not joking." Kim Yang-chun was shocked by Ho-sung's use of his own weakness to threaten him, and in the end, he had to admit that he was being held by Ho-sung. He couldn't escape, or he would lose everything. Kim Yang-chun dejectedly agreed to Ho-sung's request. After dealing with the homeroom teacher, Ho-sung left expressionlessly. But inside, he was screaming with anger because he couldn't kill Kim Yang-chun. If possible, he really wanted to destroy him completely. But he wasn't your real target. You couldn't throw away a useful piece out of anger at this moment. At least until he finished building the foundation for the Bright School, he still needed him. Although he was just a lowly teacher, he was a ruthless person who would do anything to survive. 1 week from now was the time he spent day and night thinking and planning for revenge for the past 10 years. Ho-sung returned to the classroom, packed his things, put on his school bag, and walked out of the classroom. The students in the class all looked at him with doubt and worry. At that moment, the principal, no, Ode Hwan, what would happen next would not be like what he expected. Walking out of the school gate, Ho-sung walked while thinking about what was about to happen. In an area with many buildings but looked quite old, the faint light of the sunset shone on those buildings. After school, Ho-sung carried his school bag on his back and silently walked home on the trash-filled street. As he walked in the sunset, he thought, "I can finally walk down this alley after so many years." His shabby apartment was marked 0. It was worth only about 50 million won. If it weren't for his parents' life insurance, he could barely make ends meet on his meager monthly salary. When his mother had to move here to pay for his medical bills, he felt like his whole world had collapsed. Continuing to go deeper into the old alley, Ho-sung walked down the stairs step by step, observing the familiar yet strange scene as he walked. His heart was calm as he recalled the past. Ever since he was little, he had realized that this place was too shabby, but honestly, now he was very grateful that at least this place still had a place for him to return to. Opening the door leading to the empty and shabby apartment, Ho-sung called out loudly, "Grandma," as soon as he stepped in. Walk through a room and see only empty dishes on the dining table. He suddenly remembered, if he remembered correctly, his grandmother went to work every day at this time. It was also for this family. Now was not the time to be sentimental. The fact that he had this opportunity was already a miracle. He was ready to take revenge. If possible, he should also find a better place for her and Kyung-jin. He went to his room and went to his desk, put his school bag down and hung it on the chair, thinking about the fact that there was only 1 week left until the board meeting. Ho-sung immediately opened a notebook. Now he had to plan the next step in detail and accurately. He picked up a pen and quickly wrote down the next steps in the notebook. Within 2 years, we must take over the surrounding area, build the foundation, and clean up their hideouts. To do that, he needed 3 conditions. The first condition was his own strength. To defeat the school bullies, Ho-sung needs to have enough strength to face them without any fear. He can't train himself to that level. He remembered a person who looked like a wrestler holding a gold medal. It seemed like a wrestling champion. If he could defeat that person, he would have a huge advantage in the upcoming battles. The second condition, the current situation, the future opponents were actively recruiting more people. Ho-sung wrote down the names of the members of Park Min-chun's gang. To deal with them, he needed to find people who had the same goal as him. After all, they all played important roles. He was just a freshman in high school. Even if he had a perfect plan, he wouldn't have the energy to carry it out. Ho-sung rested his chin on his hand and sat on the chair. Look at the notebook and think about how to solve this problem in the most satisfactory way. You should prioritize finding the people you need. Finally, the most important thing is the third condition that this problem can be solved because you already have experience, which is support. He needs a backer to carry out his plan so that nothing can stand in his way. Thinking of this, Ho-sung's mind flashed with images of people who relied on money to do things, such as Young Min-ho's mother, Principal Oe Hwan, and Kim Yang-chun. Those greedy people. Right now, to solve the problem of the disciplinary committee's discussion, he needed someone to rely on. This was urgent. The scene changes to the night sky, and the scene is now at the police station. At the police station, a man was shouting loudly, "Hey, do you know who I am? Do you know where I'm from? If you don't know who I am, it means you're spies and not from Daejeon. You think that just because you're a police officer, you can do whatever you want after angering me." The man who was shouting and threatening the police was a tall, muscular man, dressed luxuriously, with white-dyed hair. He was not sitting in front of the police desk, but was standing and cursing at them. One policeman could not stand the man screaming at him and frowned. "Uncle, can you calm down a bit?" The man heard someone calling him uncle and immediately jumped up. "What uncle? Who are you calling uncle? What are you talking about? I'm a 35-year-old virgin." The man jumped up and retorted. At the same time, he pointed at himself and introduced himself as only 35 years old. It turned out that he was Go Chang-balom, the eldest son of the famous Myeonjin construction group in Daejeon. Maybe Go Chang-balom was a hot-tempered person, that's why he cursed so fiercely. This son of a bitch, while cursing, he angrily kicked away the chair he was sitting next to, causing the police officers on duty at the police station to be wary of this god. A sweating policeman thought of course he knew him. Go Chang-balom, the eldest son of the Myeonjin construction group. He is a dangerous figure in Daejeon. If anything goes wrong, we will be in big trouble. But now they have to be more cautious, because if he becomes cautious, the battle for the inheritance will become a problem. But now, the situation is different. In this situation, we can only act according to the law. There is no other choice. On the other side, after he lost control, several policemen came and held Go Balom's hands and shoulders tightly. Because he was held tightly, he angrily shouted, "Let go of your hands." Perhaps that knowing at such a sensitive time, he could not cause too much trouble, he suppressed his anger and sat down on the chair. Dong-hai cursed under his breath. Damn it. The other policeman observed while continuing to think like this, rather than being investigated by other departments if we let this go. Sitting on the chair in front of the police desk, Go Chang-balom thought angrily because he was the first one to hit them. He had no choice but to bring those bastards here because they were so weak. What else could I do? Damn it, if the South knows about this, its opponents will start gossiping again. The more he thought about it, the angrier Go Chang-balom became, even pulling his hair. Recently, his father had publicly announced the start of a succession battle, so that he and his younger brother could compete to choose the most capable person to take over the business. In other words, to take his place. I only have a high school diploma, and my brother graduated from a prestigious university. 3 years ago, she married into a prestigious family in the GOAT, so her position is very strong. If she knows that I am involved in a brawl that breaks the law, I will have to accept my fate. The policeman sitting across from Go Changbom asked him with an emotionless face, Go Changbom, I know you're upset right now, but this is your fault. You beat up an innocent person, we can't just let you off the hook. Heard the policeman accuse him, but clearly he did not do so. Go Chanbolum scolded loudly. I told you they hit me first. The policeman was also startled and quickly explained, Yes, you said so, but there is no evidence there, no surveillance camera. The victim's statement is also not contradictory. Seeing the situation was unfavorable to him, Go Changbom could only helplessly turn his head away and silently curse in his heart. What the hell is this battle for inheritance? Or should he just give up? As he turned his head away to think, he accidentally discovered a boy wearing a hoodie on the seat behind him. This made him jump up in surprise and ask, Why is there a child here? The person sitting there was none other than, it was our male lead, Kim Ho-sung. He calmly smiled and pointed at Go Changbalom, saying, I came here to testify for that person. Who should I talk to about this? After finding the police officer in charge of Go Changbom's case, he showed the evidence to the police officer. He sweated as he looked at it. The police officer leaned on the table and asked, How did you get this? Just like what Go Changbalom said, they were the ones who made the first move. Anyone could tell that it was those passers-by who blocked his way. Thinking of Changbalom's situation, Ho-sung calmly replied, I happened to see it when I passed by. I thought that if there were no surveillance cameras here, someone would get into trouble. So I borrowed the dash cam of a nearby car and came here because a minor like me would not give a convincing testimony. He tried his best to avoid conflict, just as those people grabbed him and attacked him. He had no choice but to defend himself. It wasn't his fault, he was just too strong. Just one punch knocked them all out. It was clearly self-defense, officer. Hun-sung spoke coherently, had sufficient evidence, and gave a reasonable explanation. The police officer sitting next to him heard Hun-sung defending himself, which also made Go Changbom feel surprised. Then he smiled and praised the kid for speaking well. What a handsome kid. As if injected with a sedative, Go Changbalom breathed a sigh of relief. Anyway, as long as there was evidence and witnesses, the people who were beaten would be treated fairly, and he would not be in any danger. The police officer sitting next to Ho-sung also observed Go Changbalom's expression. Perhaps after seeing the evidence and listening to the testimony, this was his next support. The police officer said with a cold sweat, I understand, that's it. Wait until the victim, no, the attackers, are treated. I'll arrange another meeting. Sorry, Go Changbalom. I should have considered your words more carefully, but I saw that they were covered in blood and seemed to have lost their ability to judge. The policeman politely apologized, but Go Changbalom seemed unwilling to forgive. He grabbed the policeman's collar and brought his face close to his while frowning threateningly. I don't care, but I already remember your face. From now on, you will live a truly peaceful life. The two of them walked out of the police station while talking, because Ho-sung was a head shorter than Go Changbalom. He continued to put his arm around his shoulder. He said, My friend, thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I would have been in big trouble. I am Go Changbalom, who never forgets a favor, you know. Go Changbalom said his thanks while tilting his head to the side, reaching into his pocket as if he wanted to get something. Sure enough, he took out a stack of money. Take it. This is my little token of gratitude. Ho-sung calmly reached out to take the money and said, Thank you. Ho-sung happily put the money in his pocket, which surprised Go Changbalom. A student his age should have hesitated when receiving so much money. This kid bringing a dashcam video here was really unusual. Ho-sung immediately asked him, I'm asking you this out of curiosity. Do you think this incident was just an accident? Go Changbalom asked the boy suspiciously. What do you mean? Ho-sung didn't hide it anymore and said frankly, to be honest, you know what kind of person I am. I'm fighting for the inheritance with my younger brother Go Chang-seok. I'm the eldest son of the Myeon-jain construction group. Go Changbalom saw a strange boy who knew his identity. He frowned warily and asked, Who are you? Ho-sung quickly raised his hands to signal that he was harmless. I think this is not a coincidence, and having evidence to investigate is also. Go Changbalom. What do you think I will get? Ho Sung recalled his past memories of Go Changbalom. He was a very famous person in Daesan City. Because of that fame, he still remembered some things about his family, how they lived, what happened to them. Lying unconscious on the hospital bed, still conscious. He could hear everything around him, so he was lying in bed listening to the news on TV. Back to reality, Ho Sung suggested. If you really feel grateful, give me an hour. I promise I won't do anything to harm you, including your life. Ho Sung's strange offer is both odd and tempting, causing Go Trangbom to become serious. This place looked like a coffee shop. There were a lot of customers. Everyone was laughing and talking. It turned out that Ho Sung wanted Go Chanbalom to give him an hour to bring him to the coffee shop to continue talking. He held a phone that seemed to be playing a video and showed it to Go Changbalom. This was the original video from the dash cam. I thought I could prove it was self-defense, so I didn't show them the first part of the video. One hand held the phone playing the video and held it up in front of his face for him to see. The other hand picked up the cup of coffee and took a sip. He calmly continued talking about what happened to Changbalom. And the evidence shows that this is just a coincidence. 30 minutes before the incident, the three men gathered in front of the convenience store. On the surface, they looked like customers shopping, but 30 minutes passed and they still didn't move an inch, as if they were waiting for something. The phone screen showed Go Changbalom walking towards the three men and they immediately rushed at him. He continued to explain to him, but when he arrived, they suddenly rushed to beat him. Because they were told to be beaten, they showed their faces and cursed at him. He tried to stay calm, but in the end, he was the one who attacked first. After saying that, he put the coffee cup in his hand on the table, making a sound as if he was leading the story to continue. Yes, Changbalom was sure he had his suspicions. The series of events that had happened recently seemed to be deliberately planned. The battle for the succession had just begun, so bad things kept happening one after another. What if all of this was planned by Chang Shok to bring him down? Whether it was an accident or on purpose, either way, the severity of the problem makes a huge difference. Listening to the step-by-step guidance aroused the hidden doubts in his heart. Go Changbalom lowered his head and thought angrily, "Actually, I have always had doubts. But I don't want to admit that he is my younger brother. How could someone who was raised so well do such rotten things?" After thinking for a while, Go Changbalom asked Ho Sung suspiciously, "Then why are you telling me these things?" Sitting across from Go Changbalom, Ho Sung picked up his coffee cup and took a small sip, thinking to himself, Myeon Jain Construction Company is only famous locally. Currently, it is still unknown, but with advanced technology and strong capital, they have achieved success in the field of apartment branding. Because of Chairman Go Myeon Jain's philosophy of not making fun of the house that people depend on for their living, they minimize the cost of production and increase the success rate. They then successfully brought Myeon Jain Construction Company into the ranks of large corporations, but at the same time, both of his sons had problems. Ho Sung sat there remembering what he had witnessed at that time. Go Chang Seok had provoked him first. Not long after, an accident shook the entire city of Daesan. The impact was so great that even a victim of school violence like me, who seemed unable to care about anything else, knew about it. The younger brother fought for the inheritance and did not hesitate to use any means. In the end, his older brother, Go Changbalom, found out. His older brother beat him to death. Because of that beating, Go Chang Seok became disabled for life. Not long after, Go Myeon Jain announced that both sons were incompetent and could not entrust the Myeon Jain Construction Company to them. This caused quite a stir. At that time, the excavation and investigation of the two sons' behavior was very popular, to the point that their photos were spread as a meme on the internet. That's why Ho Sung was able to remember and go there to find evidence that Go Changbalom was harmed by his younger brother. Anyway, because of this incident, Chairman Go Myeon Jain hired a professional manager. This made the Myeon Jain Construction Company develop rapidly. After being assigned to a capable manager, it became a famous corporation. In fact, it's for the benefit of Myeon Jain Construction Company. If the outcome doesn't change, it's better. Go Changbalom isn't evil in taking down his competitor, but he's a useless person with a rotten personality. And his younger brother Go Chang Seok is a dirty guy. He will do anything regardless of morality to achieve his goals. The wisest thing to do is to abandon both of these sons for the benefit of Myeonjane Construction Company. But then again, that doesn't matter to Ho-sung now. Their value to him is more important. Whether it's right or wrong, the butterfly effect will happen when the future changes, but that has nothing to do with me. Even if the future becomes worse because of my choice, Ho-sung doesn't care. In this life, what's important to him is to first take revenge and then take care of his family. With determination about his choice, Ho-sung continued to tell Go-chang Balom, I will help you, so you can take revenge on your younger brother Go-chang Seok, and then you can become the chairman of the famous Myeonjane Construction Company. Hearing Ho-sung say that he would help him compete for the company, Go-chang Balom couldn't help but laugh. It's ridiculous that you're just a high school student. Why can you help me? He looked down on Ho-sung. Ho-sung continued to use tactics to try to lure him to his side. There were definitely people helping him in this race, but he didn't see it. His supporters only knew how to flatter him with sweet words. But I, a high school student, was able to clearly analyze and describe his younger brother Go-chang Seok's plan. It was clear as day that all of them were Go-chang Seok's men. Ho-sung, like a sober person, woke Go-chang Balom from his dream of fighting for the inheritance. Gradually facing Ho-sung, he became more serious. Ho-sung continued, I don't need you to believe me. Just give me a chance to build trust between us. Ho-sung's proposal left Go-chang Balom confused. He didn't know what to do. In fact, he was an incompetent person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been fooled by his younger brother until now.